The next quality of the sadhana chatushtaya that is discussed is also very, very important to develop. All of them are important, but this one especially addresses the mind. And I wanted to go a bit more into the mind because, everybody has turbulence now and again with the mind. How we handle the turbulence is in our hands. It is not abnormal to have turbulence with our thinking patterns. And sometimes prarabdha suddenly rises and we cannot think positively, so only negatively. But samadhana is the next value. Samadhana is developing focus. He says here, samadhanam kim, chitte kagrata. Chitte kagrata is a beautiful word. Chittasya eka vastu agre, which means your flow of thoughts, all the thoughts should be connected to a single thing. All the thoughts should be connected to a single thing. We should be very careful here. There is a saying in English, one-track mind. It is not a one-track mind. That is quite a negative way of saying it. It is a focus of the thinking on one particular thing. So it's developing your attention span. It's developing your concentration, keeping an object of Vedanta study as a mental occupation for your life for a length of time. So the focusing capacity of the mind with the teaching given by the guru. So it is not just limited to the class. It is going back. That is why I send the points to ponder to the group. The week, you should have that mental space to think about what has been said, to assimilate, and if there's any questions or doubts, to clarify them as well. So this is the samadhanam. Focus for anything in life is important. And your quality of your life, not just for spiritual knowledge, the quality of your life depends on how well you can concentrate and what you focus on in life as well. As we saw in the Gita class as well, Patanjali is fantastic. The Yoga Sutras for addressing issues of the mind. He brings this samadhanam in his 6th stage of this Ashtanga yoga, which is dharana, to sustain, to hold, holding steady, sustaining, concentration, single focus. The mind thinks about one object and avoids other thoughts. So even if it wanders, what do? You bring it back. You develop this capacity of bringing it back. And when you develop this more and more, what happens? It seems like there is only one thought. It is not one thought. It is like frame, same thought. You cannot have one thought in the head with one object, although it seems like a flow of thoughts. Ramana Maharishi said it is like this ajya dharaya, shrotasa samam. If you remember in Upadesha Saram, he said it's like pouring that ghee, that oil from one vessel to another. The thought should flow like that without any break at all. So this is what is discussed with this value. Bhagavan says, in his description of meditation in the 6th chapter of the Gita, he says, what is meditation? Yato nischarati manas chanchalamasstiram tatas tato niyametat atmanyeva vasham nayet. He says very clearly, the mind's nature is chanchalam. Chanchalam is what? Disturbed mind. If your mind is not disturbed, you're not normal. The mind's nature is to be disturbed. Every mind is disturbed. Chanchalam. Chanchalam means always changing. 1 minute like this, 1 minute like that, 1 minute like this, 1 minute like that. That is very natural. But when you sit for meditation, what happens? You manage that chanchalatvam. You bring it back. He says, keep bringing it back. If it goes for Black Friday sale, bring it back. If it goes for any other thing, bring it back to the object. Keep an object of meditation. That's why it's important. If you do meditation, to meditate on nothing is very, very difficult. It is always good to keep a focus. So you connect, either we say Ishta Devata. If you have an Ishta Devata, which is, a deity of your choice, some deity you connect to. If you cannot connect to any forms, you can connect to light. Jyoti meditation is there. You can meditate on a lamp flame as well. That helps as well. So samyak adiyate anena iti samadhanam. It is like developing this mind which becomes like a magnifying glass that focuses the light of the sun. It is like, the threading the mind through the eye of a needle. It is that, that type of focus one needs. And how do we develop the focus? How do we develop such focus? First thing is that you have to make your priorities clear in life. Everything depends on your priorities. Where does your interest lie in life? Everyone has to examine themselves and see, where is my interest? If your priorities are clear, if your interest is clear, focus will be maintained. So be clear. Samadhanam means being clear about moksha, the goal. That is the key. Keep the goal in sight, hit the target, focus on one thing without distraction. Anything in life requires that as well. In the Mahabharata, Samadhanam is explained as the absorption of the state of mind in one which has, for which one has no longer any longing for the world. So it is an absorption of your mind where you have no more any longing for the world. It takes on a spiritual aspect in the Mahabharata explanation of Samadhana, because it is not just mere focus. It is focusing on a spiritual goal. And that is why it is discussed here as sadhana chatushtaya sampattihi. Of course, Adi Shankaracharya takes the definition, all these definitions, to another level of understanding, always connecting anything that is prescribed in the Shastra with the goal of moksha. He says, Sarvada stapanam buddhehe shuddhe brahmani sarvada tat samadhanam ityuktam natu chittasya lalanam. Samadhanam, he says, is not indulging just in any thought and losing yourself in that thought. He's not talking about that type of focus. It is a constant, he says, constant concentration of the intellect, the constant concentration focusing on pure consciousness, the self, on discovering that truth, moksha. It is keeping your goal in sight. And samadhanam is essential for shravanam, the ability to sit with oneself and listen and re-listen to Shastra. The teaching is not an ordinary achievement. All of you here have definitely developed this samadhanam to a certain extent, to be able to sit and listen again and again to Shastra. And before developing samadhanam, we need to address certain issues of our mind. It comes up again and again, and it is not repetition, it is reiteration. Why we talk about mind and issues again and again is that we have to keep reminding the mind. There's a saying in the Amrita Bindu Upanishad, the very famous saying, Mana eva manushyanam karanam bandhamochayoho. Your mind, for man, the mind is the cause, primary cause for bondage, and the mind is also the primary cause for liberation. The same mind. It is a cause for your bondage, it is cause for the liberation as well. So it is how you manage your mind, how you understand thought. Racing thoughts are strings of thoughts that are blown out of proportion. We have racing thoughts. Unhealthy patterns of thinking consume our time, and often they don't have. You also examine your lives. If we have irrational, unhealthy thinking patterns that keep consuming my mind, they don't have any rational conclusion. Often you find when you let your mind race off like that, what is the product of a racing mind? Shastra says there is no rational conclusion. Thoughts can prevent you from living in the present moment. They make it difficult for even the slightest, the easiest task to be completed. Sleeping at night also becomes a problem. That is why we have to address issues of the mind very, very carefully. Swamiji used to say, mind is a delicate baby. All our minds are delicate babies. It's nothing. We should not be harsh with the mind. At the same time, the baby needs to be trained. The baby, sometimes we have to put nappy on the baby, otherwise it will go all over the place. No, baby needs to be trained. And there's a way of life to train the baby of the mind in the Gita. Gita is the text. We have not seen that chapter, but you'll see Bhagavan prescribes the way of life as well. And he talks about Dhyanam in the 6th chapter. But Arjuna also, everybody will be happy to hear, Arjuna also had the same problem as every human being. What did he say to Bhagavan? He said, Chanchalam himanah Krishna pramati balavadridam tasyaham nigraham manye vayoriva sudushkaram. Oh Lord, oh Krishna, my mind is so restless. It is turbulent. It is strong. It is obstinate. It appears to me more difficult to control than the wind itself. That was his experience with his mind. Now, if Arjuna, being such an adhikari, is having that experience, what hope is there? You may ask for me. But Lord is compassionate. Lord knows the mind is not easy to manage. He knows. He's the one who's given the mind, after all, right? He knows the whole of the humanity grapples with mental issues. He acknowledges that as well. But also he says, and this is very important, in the following verse, he says, nothing is impossible. He tells Arjuna, it is not impossible to manage your mind. And he gives two techniques. He says, Abhyasena tu kaunteya, vairagyena cha grihyate. Oh, Arjuna, yes, I agree with you. Everything you say about the mind is right. It is turbulent. It is chanchalam. It is going all over the place, restless. It is difficult to restrain. But with practice, abhyasena, with practice and detachment, dispassion towards your thoughts, detachment, it can be controlled. It can be managed. And this manaha, what part of the mind needs to be managed? It is the always changing aspect, the thoughts that keep fluctuating. And also another aspect of the mind needs management. It is the unconscious, the chittam, where all the stored memories are there. All your subconscious tendencies, the latent tendencies, which come up as vasanas, that also needs to be managed. The types of thought that grab my attention in life and drag me away from the peaceful me are these two types of thought, either memories or the turbulent mind, anxious, which could be jumping to the future as well. Future thoughts of future also create fear, anxiety. What's going to happen to me? Am I going to be okay? All of this creates fear in one and drags you away from present moment. That is why Bhagavad Gita becomes key. Bhagavad Gita psychology becomes key to your managing your mind as well. Bhagavan also says, if you remember in the 3rd chapter, very important verse, he says, Sadrisham cheshtate swasyaha prakriter gunavanapi prakritim yanti bhutani nigrahah kim karishyati. We are driven by our vasanas. He says, Bhagavan says, we are driven by the vasanas. What can repression do? You cannot control your samskaras. That is the, very, very important thing to understand. You cannot control your vasanas. They are part of your nature. Your nature and nurture have made you your personality that you are now. Everything has gone to make you who you are. You cannot control that. We cannot blame our past as well. That is our prarabdha. We have come with that. Nobody can blame their past. Nobody can blame their mothers, fathers, their grandmothers, because they themselves before were in that way situation as well. Bhagavan himself says, Prakriti, you cannot control your Prakriti in this way by rejecting it. You can manage it though. You can recognize your Prakriti, that vasanas that have come with you. Once you recognize them, you can manage them. So he says, don't come under the sway of negative vasanas, those vasanas or those thinking patterns, those habits that drag you down in life. Only you know what drags you down. What prevents you from moving on in life? What prevents you from growing in life? There are definitely some thinking patterns that are holding you down. Those are the ones that only you, using your free will, tayor navashamagachet, tauhyasya paripantino. Those likes and dislikes that you come very deeply ingrained, they are the culprits, they're your enemies. They're the ones that drag you. This attraction and aversion in life is the culprit. Attraction to things, aversion to things. Attraction, aversion. Both forms of attachment. We think only attachment means attraction. When we're attracted to something, we're attached to it, we're with it. Shastra says aversion is also a form of attachment. When you run away from something, you're also attached to it. Because you don't want it in your life, that means you're attached to it. So whether you want something in your life or you don't want it, that is attachment. And those are the things that are going to make you end up in sorrow. But still, what do? Things become objects of our love or aversion. and we don't, we don't know how to manage people in our lives. We don't know how to manage situations in our life, and we let everything take us for a ride. So it is by understanding the problem alone, we will discover the solution. What is the problem? There are 3 obstacles in the mind that are the main problem given in our scriptures. 3 wrong ways of thinking, erroneous notions, and they are often compared to diseases that frequently afflict the antahkarana, our mind, and they hinder your spiritual development. Not just your spiritual development, they hinder all aspects of your life. Mala is the first one. You saw this, but it is important to go through, because Samadhanam as a quality will not come to you unless you've addressed these. Mala means mental impurities, mainly due to raga dvesha, the accumulated dirt of this life and previous lives. Mala is the imprint of wrong thinking which has been carried in your DNA. It has been carried in your chitta, life after life, wrong thinking, and it has become you. That wrong thinking has become right thinking for you. That is the amazing thing. One who thinks in a wrong direction cannot think it is wrong. They think it is right and everybody else is wrong. It takes tremendous grace for you to realize you are in the wrong thing, wrong mode of thinking. Tremendous grace. Even that grace of recognition is the beginning of spiritual growth. Problem is me, solution is me. That thought should come, and it should be assimilated. Nothing in the world outside is responsible for my unhappiness. Nobody is responsible for my sorrow. Nothing. That is, again, that thought should come to me. Let me change myself. Gandhiji said, let me become the change I want to see in the world. Be the change you want to see in the world. It is only up to you. If you change your thinking, you change the way you think, you will see the world changes. In fact, it is not the world changing. You see it like that. It is your perception of the world changes, and your reactions to the world, they change as well. So this is mala, the mala of all this past life, kama, krodha, lobha, all of that is mala. The shadaris, how is it removed? Shastra, that is the beauty of the scriptures. It doesn't just tell you what is wrong. It doesn't just tell you this is wrong with you, that's it, finished. Then you're left helpless, hopeless. What do we have to turn to? It says there is a solution to get rid of the mala. What is it? Karma yoga, seva. Do this again and again until that mala is removed. If you want antahkarana shuddhi, you want to get rid of impurities in the mind, you see all this dust in the mind again and again, it keeps coming up. You do service, reach out to others. Do your work as worship. Very important to remove these impurities. Whatever happens, you may not reach the heights of your career. You may not reach all that is successful, but you live the lifestyle that is prescribed in the scriptures. Definitely the mala will disappear from the mind as well. Satsang, mantras, prayers, Ishvara's grace, very much needed to remove malas in the mind. So removing mala requires alert living, persistent practice, continuous and persistent practice, which is what Bhagavan says, abhyasa. For raw gold to be converted to pure gold, it has to be melted on fire and repeatedly melted on fire to remove all the impurities. Same way. Then it is beaten to make an ornament. It goes through tremendous stress. So that is how mala can be only eliminated, practice over a period of time. And if you ask, how much time will it take? We will say lifelong. So you can keep asking, we will say lifelong. For some, you cannot put a time frame to it. Some people, it may be 1 day. Some people, it may be 1 month. Some people, it may be 5 years. But if I have Shraddha, again, the Shraddha becomes important. If I have Shraddha in the words of scriptures, if I have Shraddha in the words of Bhagavan himself, then definitely I trust what he's saying is true. And mala, I will practice the lifestyle. So mala is one big, big obstacle to us in our lives. The other obstacle is vikshepa. Vikshepa, we saw this. Vikshepa in this context of the mind is internal mental distractions and disturbances. These are turbulent waves of thinking, thoughts, and they suddenly come up and they go. And it's again constant, wavering of the mind. These types of thoughts come, and I project. These thoughts make you project onto the world things that are not there. You start seeing things that don't even exist, actually. You start project from your own background. What happens? These thoughts, this person is behaving in this way because of this. That's it. That's truth for you. You live in your own mind. It's called Jiva Shrishti. And that is your projection. That is your truth. And where do you suffer? Maybe that person is not even behaving that for that, in that way for that reason. Maybe that person has different reason for behaving in a certain way. But my mind projects, this person is like this, the label is like this. This person is like this, and projects. And then who suffers? The person doesn't suffer, I suffer. Maybe the person suffers if I make them a victim of my projections. That's again a problem. Others become victim of my projections, which become my reality, which is not their reality. That is where we clash all the time. Their projections become their reality. My projections become my reality, and both don't meet. There's no one reality where people meet, because nobody sees what is then. And what is Ishvara. What is Bhagavan manifesting, and that's objective seeing. People don't see objectively. That is why we train more and more. Shastra trains the minds to think objectively. Pariprashna, even giving technique. Look from thousands of directions, look at one thing. How can you see one thing in a different way? How can you see it in a different way than you're seeing it right now? Can somebody else see it in a different way? Yes, I'm sure. One situation, even if you ask, there are game shows like that. They will give one picture or something. Someone will say, I see this. Another person will say, I see something else. Another person will say, I see something else. How does that work? It is exactly the same picture that is put in front of everybody. But everybody has different perceptions, like the 6 blind men feeling the elephant. Very famous story, exactly like that. One blind man feels the trunk of the elephant and says, this is the elephant. Other blind man feels the leg of the elephant, says, this is the elephant. One feels the tail, says, this is the elephant. Like that. They are again, feeling all different parts of elephant. Each one claims this is the elephant. Is anybody wrong? Is anybody right? All are right in some way, because they're all saying, it is part of the elephant they see. But do they see the full elephant? They cannot see the full elephant. But they claim the other one is wrong, because the other one's experience is not the same as mine. They're feeling the tail, and they're describing the tail is thin and long, and I'm saying it's fat and large. No, you're wrong. Elephant is not thin and long. It is fat and strong. This is how we act in life. And this is the biggest mistake that we all make as human beings. We cannot see the other person's perspective in life. Very, very sad, because of our own Vikshepa Shakti. Our Vikshepa spoils our life, because we don't spend a moment to think, maybe from their side, things look differently. Maybe they could look differently. And this Vikshepa is a big obstacle for spiritual life. If I allow my subjective Vikshepa to overtake my life, I will again get into conflict after conflict after conflict, and I will be hurt again and again. All the hurts I will store in life. And in fact, without knowing, it's my own Vikshepa that could be projecting something which may not really be there. So to manage this waywardness of mind, one should take to various spiritual practices. Again, spiritual practices are advocated to manage Vikshepa Shakti also. And what are the spiritual practices advocated by Vikshepa? Mala is Karma Yoga, Seva, prayer, all of that. Vikshepa specifically is Japa Yajna. That's why Bhagavan says Japa, very important, taking a mantra, constantly repeating that mantra. You may not think anything's happening. Over course of time, your thoughts, your habits will definitely shift. Upasana and Japa, Pranayama, these are all the yajnas to remove this Vikshepa Shakti from the mind, or to convert the Vikshepa Shakti. I won't say remove, convert the Vikshepa Shakti into healthy Vikshepa Shakti, which makes you see situations as they are, which helps you to see what is, and more objective in life and less subjective, less me. So these two are the first impurities. Of course, the last one is not even an impurity, because if that one goes, everything goes in one shot. That is Avarana Shakti. That covers our minds totally. The curtain of not knowing that clouds are true nature from ourselves, that clouds are nature as Atma consciousness. Avarana can only be removed by jnana, because it is ignorance. So study of Vedanta and Nididhyasana, the practice of Nididhyasana, contemplation of what is being taught, that punah shravanam, that avarana is removed by the listening again and again, that ignorance sheath that is removed. So samadhanam, chitta ekagrata, can only come when you have addressed issues of the mind.